Hello, I'm Dr. Sandra Cabot. Welcome to my webinars where I share information to give you knowledge and clarity to enhance your health and well-being. I've been a medical doctor for over 50 years and I know that knowledge is power. So let's go. Hello everyone. Welcome to our live stream on energy. And I'm joined today by Igor Pershin, who is a mindset coach, and he'll be with us in just a minute. And it's really a fascinating subject. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I was in there, but then I forgot to press it at the stage. Anyway, here I am.
Yeah, and we're going to put our banner on too.
Yes.
So I hope everybody's feeling energized. But if you're not, you're going to learn how to boost your energy today with natural, safe strategies. So energy is so fascinating, and it's not normal for people to be tired all the time. And so many people struggle with having enough energy to do the things that they love or even do routine tasks. So we have a slideshow that we're going to incorporate, and I'm going to start by talking about mitochondria. And they're fascinating, and you probably know that they are the energy factories inside our cells. So think about this. The average adult human has 30 trillion cells. It can vary from 20 to 100 trillion, which is a big variation, depending on your body weight, your age, your general health, and your sex. So there is a lot of variation, but there's trillions of cells, on average 30 trillion, in the average human adult. And each of those cells is powered by the mighty mitochondria. And some cells have thousands of mitochondria, whereas other cells, like your brain cells, have millions of mitochondria. That's millions in every brain cell. And indeed, in general, about 30% of the volume of every cell is made up of mitochondria. So what do these mitochondria do? Well, they make energy in the form of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, and it contains glucose, nitrogen, and phosphate. So, when you think about it, the fertilizers that farmers use is nitrogen phosphate. So the plants need it for their mitochondria. But it's incredible. Do you know how much ATP our body produces every day, Igor?
I imagine it's some crazy giant amount. Millions.
Yeah.
Kilojoules? Like, how do you even measure ATP?
Well, it's equal to your body weight. So,
Okay.
if you weigh 100 kilograms, you're going to make 100 kilograms of ATP.
Well,
Huge.
every day.
Yeah, every day. So your mitochondria, basically, they're sustaining every cell in your body. And if your mitochondria don't make enough ATP, the cell will not function. It will not be able to make its proteins. It will not be able to make its enzymes. It will not be able to make its hormones. And it will not be able to repair or protect itself. So it's critical.
Oh.
And anyone who has a fatigue problem can benefit greatly by improving their mitochondria. So we can improve the quality of our mitochondria, and we can improve the number of our mitochondria. Simple things like exercise, eating healthy fats, eating less sugar. Sugar can break your mitochondria up. And this is why diabetics have so many complications, because every cell in their body is struggling to produce energy. So the cell can't protect itself, so you get damage to nerve cells, cells in arteries, heart cells, brain cells. So it's very important that mitochondrial health is improved in diabetics, but just in anybody who's tired and they're not getting better and they don't know why, we've got to look at mitochondria.
Is that
So,
is your slideshow meant to be progressing? I think you're still on the first slide.
no, it's not really. I'm just, it's not progressing yet because we're going to do a
Ah,
series of this.
gotcha.
But I was going to talk about, how the mitochondria make the ATP. So they make the ATP in the Krebs cycle, the redox cycle. So they turn glucose or ketones into the energy in the form of ATP. Now, during that process, our mitochondria make something called NAD. And NAD requires a molecule called NMN. Have you heard of that? So
I have.
basically,
It's
it's called,
what all the people who are wanting to live to 1,000 are talking about.
fair enough. I don't think I want to live that long. Goodness. But NMN is nicotinamide mononucleotide, and it's actually made from vitamin B3. But as we get older, or if we're exposed to toxins and free radicals, we are not as efficient as turning NMN into NAD and then into ATP. So our cells are not producing enough energy. So this happens in people as they age. It happens in people who are exposed to toxic chemicals and people with infections. And it's a big problem. So one of the things you can take to help your mitochondria make more energy is NMN. So, you can get it in a capsule. It's a bit hard to see here, but you can get NMN supplements. And some people find them very good at improving their mitochondrial health. So you take 500 milligram capsule once or twice daily, and that can really boost the ATP.
So you'd know that if you're, so say you try taking it for a month, you'd know that it's working by just feeling more energetic.
Yes, you would. And in some
Okay.
people, it works very quickly, depending on how damaged their mitochondria are. Some people notice after a couple of weeks that their energy's a lot better, and they notice that they don't look as old and as tired. Some people can take up to 6 months, depending on how dysfunctional their mitochondria are. So you do need to persist with it. But if it hasn't helped you after 6 months, it's probably not going to. But other things you can do for your mitochondria is to supplement with magnesium, because in the Krebs cycle, which is also called the redox cycle, that's producing the ATP, magnesium is required. And a lot of people are magnesium deficient, which won't show up in a blood test. So to have optimal magnesium levels to boost your energy, you often need to supplement. And that will really help energy production in your body. And the other wonderful thing about magnesium, it has been studied at the ANU University in Australia and found to reduce cognitive decline. And I'm sure that's because it's producing energy in the neurons. It's helping our neurons to make more energy. And your neurons can't produce neurotransmitters without energy. And your neurons can't protect themselves without energy. So magnesium is a great mitochondrial supplement. So we've
Is
got
that any type of magnesium or magnesium glycinate or citronate?
I like supplements that have different types of magnesium in them. So your magnesium orotate, your magnesium glycinate, magnesium phosphate. The magnesium I don't recommend is magnesium oxide because it's not well absorbed. So the other thing that's involved in the energy production is coenzyme Q10. And some people find that really helps their energy as well. So these are the mitochondrial supplements that can really help us. The other thing, it's very important to eat the right type of fat. So if you're eating processed food that contains processed vegetable and seed oils, those fats will damage your mitochondria. And they don't fit into the tiny little structures in the mitochondria that are necessary to produce the energy. So give up the processed food, give up the processed vegetable oils and seed oils, and start eating healthy fats like your olive oil, your coconut oil, your tallow, your grass-fed ghee, the fat on meat, lots of fish, and also chicken and eggs, all those healthy, natural, unprocessed fats. And that's going to help your energy production.
So is that how? Yeah, because I always wondered. I've known for a long time that seed oils are not good for me, but I didn't fully understand why. So is that the key reason? Because they don't help you produce enough ATP, therefore don't help you produce enough energy, because they don't fit into the actual mitochondria.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
they're distorted in shape, these fats, and they don't fit into your cell structures. And, the mitochondria really are the most critical cell structures because they're producing the energy that enables your cells to function, to produce their hormones and their enzymes. So basically, they clog up your metabolic pathways. I call them social misfits in cellular society. And, we've got so many people now eating processed food high in these vegetable and seed oils. And they think it's healthy because it says vegetable oil, but it's actually very bad for your cell metabolism. So we've got to get back into eating everything natural, unprocessed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it took me ages to, because when my wife and I started shopping together, like I was trying to teach her about the sort of the danger around canola and that kind of thing. So we, over time we shifted to cooking with coconut oil and cooking with like a high quality olive oil for lower temperature things. And I think the hard one to find was actually like because my wife and kids love to spread butter on toast and trying to find a spreadable butter, and I looked through every single one on the shelf in the fridge, and there was only one that didn't contain vegetable oil. Like I'd say 99% of them contain vegetable oil. It's quite hard to find.
yeah. So just eat butter or tallow or grass-fed ghee.
Mm.
Butter is really healthy. It has a lot of substances that are good for your cell membranes. Um, so the benefits of healthy mitochondria, one of them is mental energy and focus. And recently I had a patient who for many, many years had suffered with depression and had a past history of addiction. And she started eating fat, grass-fed ghee, tallow, bone broth which if you have bone broth, it has a lot of fat in it, the organic grass-fed bone broth, and more chicken, more eggs, coconut oil, and her depression went after several months. And that's amazing because that's someone who had suffered with long-term depression. So, it helps your brain to grow. Your brain will grow, your depression will go. Your brain is made of fat. And so many people don't get enough fat. So their neurons will shrink, their brain will shrink. And their particular then mitochondria will not have the right structure and function, so the neurons will not have enough energy to make neurotransmitters. So, that was fascinating because this patient had been on antidepressants for many, many years, and they probably helped a bit, but they didn't treat the cause. They didn't fix the underlying functional deficiency of neurotransmitters. So it's very inspiring for people who, are trying to reduce the dose of antidepressants or psychotropic drugs. So that's one benefit of improving your mitochondria: mental energy and focus, a better memory, slowing down aging. We all want to do that. And, there's studies, a lot of animal studies that show that the supplement NMN can slow down aging, and that's because it's improving mitochondria. Less inflammation, that's important for people with pain, and also cell protection and repair, because autoimmune disease can be very destructive and it can destroy tissues, it can destroy cells. So if we can make our cells more bulletproof, make them resistant to damage by improving their mitochondria, we will be able to grow new cells, particularly in the liver, but also in the gut, and protect ourselves from diseases, from chronic diseases.
So,
Yeah.
Sandra, I have a quick question. I heard this theory back when I was studying functional medicine that, like, obviously, ideally, you want to minimize sort of the bad fats. But if you do have some, then you can sort of balance it out with good fats from, say, like sardines or anchovies or herring or that kind of thing. Is that true?
Well, if you had a small amount of processed fat, occasionally, sure, you'll be fine. But in somebody who has, severe gut inflammation or autoimmune disease, you have to be careful. You wouldn't want to do it regularly because they're inflammatory. These processed seed oils. There's somebody who's made a comment saying that there is a butter soft.
Oh, that was me. I was just
Oh, that's
sharing the one we found. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. No worries. Okay, great. So mitochondria are fascinating. If you think about, we've got like 30 trillion cells in our body, and each cell has got thousands of mitochondria, and brain cells have got millions of mitochondria per cell. Then you can influence your own health in a profound way. So this is all nutritional medicine, which is very scientific and really works in the long term. So for people out there who have chronic fatigue syndrome, it really can be a struggle because they've got to look at all the factors that could be damaging their cells. And it's not normal to be tired all the time. So you've got to be a detective and not give up. You've got to keep looking if you want to discover the cause of your chronic fatigue. Now, one thing that can really impair your energy is chronic infection. And we're talking about things that could be hidden in your body, very insidious. You may not know that you have this. It could be bacterial, such as Lyme disease, which comes from tick bites, or streptococcus or E. coli in your gut. It could be viral, and you could have a very high viral load in your body. We all have trillions of viruses in us. That's normal. But if the total amount of virus in your cells is too much, that will cause cell damage and damage to your mitochondria. So some of the common viruses that I see in patients with fatigue is herpes, and there's 8 different types of herpes viruses that infect humans. Glandular fever, Epstein-Barr virus, hepatitis virus, cytomegalovirus, long COVID, respiratory syncytial virus. We could go on and on, but it's very important to help your immune system reduce the amount of virus in your body. It could be fungal, it could be a yeast, it could be something like candida, particularly in people who are on immunosuppressant drugs or steroids, or they've taken way too many antibiotics. So we've got to work on the gut microbiome. But of course, there's a microbiome everywhere, in your lungs, in your mouth, in your bladder, in your sinuses, in your nose. So these infections can be hidden in all those spaces. You could have a chronic grumbling autoimmune disease. So autoimmune disease can be very aggressive, acute, and obvious, or it can be very insidious, slow, and grumbling, and it may just manifest as fatigue. And if we suspect an autoimmune disease, we check for antibodies in the blood of various types, and if they're elevated, that could be a sign that we need to look at your immune system closer. It could also cause elevated inflammatory markers in your body, such as C-reactive protein, and we can pick that up with a blood test. Gut problems, well, gut problems are always associated with fatigue, particularly leaky gut, and also inadequate digestive secretions. So you may find doing a cleanse or a detox could really help you. You may find that natural antibiotics such as Bactoclear or garlic and horseradish, you may find that after you do a detox, a probiotic can help. And you may find that glutamine powder can help to heal a leaky gut. It's very good. Just taken in water, 1 teaspoon, 2 or 3 times a day away from food. Another thing that is excellent in improving your gut microbiome, and indeed the microbiome in all the spaces in your body, is intermittent fasting. And this can starve the bad microorganisms, and then the healthy microorganisms have a chance to proliferate. The other thing we know about intermittent fasting is it increases the amount of mitochondria in your cells. So that's fantastic. There's a simple way to boost the amount of mitochondria and the quality of mitochondria. Yeah. So we have a comment there. West Gold grass-fed butter is the best. Didn't know that one. West Gold grass-fed butter. Yeah. Some people keep it in a dish on the bench. Well, that's okay in summertime and wintertime, but summertime it would melt. I keep my butter in the freezer. It stays really fresh.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
If I kept mine on the bench, it would be a puddle. I'd be in cans.
Yeah. That was Erica. Thanks for that comment, Erica. Now, a lot of people with fatigue will have inadequate intestinal secretions such as bile, hydrochloric acid, and pancreatic enzymes. And this can be due to getting older, or you may have lost your gallbladder, you may be on antacid drugs, or you may have a fatty pancreas or just a lazy pancreas. And so even though you have a healthy diet, you're not able to absorb the nutrients from the healthy diet. So some people will need a supplement of bile, hydrochloric acid, and digestive enzymes that are pancreatic enzymes. The other thing, the vagus nerve, if that is not working properly, well, that can reduce the amount of intestinal secretions. Now, the adrenal glands, these are so important because the adrenal glands, you can see they're very, very small. They sit on top of the kidneys, but they are producing the cortisol, which gives you a lot of energy, and they're producing adrenaline. So in the morning, your adrenal glands are regulated by the brain to increase the amount of cortisol and adrenaline. So if you feel particularly tired in the mornings, that could be sluggish adrenal glands, damaged adrenal glands, or even adrenal gland failure. So we can do a blood test to measure the amount of cortisol in the morning, and then we can check the amount of cortisol later in the day, so the late afternoon when it should be lower. So we want to see that nice circadian rhythm. So in anyone with chronic fatigue, we really need to double check their adrenals. And I had a patient once who had chronic fatigue for over a decade. And she had been to a lot of different specialists, and she had so much inflammation in her body and was exhausted. And when I tested her adrenals, she had adrenal gland failure. So that's Addison's disease. So that's very serious, and that can actually cause a type of acute shock and be fatal. So most people don't have that degree of adrenal gland damage, but a lot of people have significant adrenal gland dysfunction, and they really need to work on repairing their adrenals. And one thing that really can help the adrenals is magnesium and vitamin C. So vitamin C is so important for the function of the adrenals. They have a high requirement for vitamin C. The other thing that can help your adrenals is N-acetylcysteine and selenium. So that is because that combination of N-acetylcysteine and selenium will boost glutathione, which will repair cell damage, including damage in the cells of the adrenal glands. So always think of your adrenals, the little energy glands in our body. And that's just a blood test that shows you that in the morning, you can see that your adrenal glands are pumping out more cortisol than they are later in the day. And another hormone that is made by the adrenals is DHEA. And as we get older, we don't make as much DHEA, and that can cause us to be more tired. So we can supplement with DHEA. So generally, you only need about 10 milligrams in women, maybe 20 to 25 milligrams in men in the morning, and that can make a big difference. The other thing that we can see in people with fatigue, particularly mental fatigue and foggy brain, is that their brain is not producing enough neurotransmitters, particularly the neurotransmitter that we call dopamine. And of course, everybody thinks about Parkinson's disease when we talk about dopamine, because in Parkinson's disease, there's a gross deficiency of dopamine. But dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is very important for mood. It makes us feel satisfied. It makes us feel content. And it also motivates us. So for people with addiction, the dopamine is often deficient. So we make dopamine and adrenaline in our brain and our adrenal glands from the amino acid tyrosine. So tyrosine we get in our diet, but sometimes vegans can be lacking amino acids, and that includes tyrosine. So that may contribute to a foggy brain. So you can take a tyrosine supplement, such as a tyrosine powder. I find that works better than tablets. And you just stir it into water and you take it, and it'll boost your dopamine and your adrenaline for about 4 hours. So if you're having a day where you've got mental fatigue and foggy brain, you can take the tyrosine every 4 hours. Whereas if you're having a day where you feel okay, you probably don't need it. So, your brain's efficiency in making neurotransmitters does go up and down depending on your stress levels and also on your diet and on how much inflammation is present in your cells. And so we mentioned mitochondria as being very important. So if your brain cells don't have a healthy mitochondria to produce enough energy for your neurons to turn the tyrosine into adrenaline and dopamine, you're going to have a foggy brain. So you can see how we're always going back to the mitochondria producing the energy for our cells to do these biochemical functions. Without energy, our cells can't perform these specific functions, and everything gets depleted. Everything gets out of balance, and we lose our homeostasis. We become chronically fatigued.
It makes so much sense. Like the solution to feeling tired all the time is to look at your sources of energy and really breaking that
Yeah,
down.
exactly. And we won't do all the slides now because we're going to do this as a series. But in women, what we see as a common cause of fatigue is iron deficiency. And of course, iron is what carries the oxygen around your bloodstream and donates it. It's donated to every cell in your body. So iron's carrying the oxygen, and the oxygen is needed for your mitochondria to turn glucose and ketones into energy. So if you're low in iron, that means you're going to have chronic lack of oxygen, what we call hypoxia. So every cell in your body will not have enough oxygen to give to your mitochondria, so your mitochondria will not be able to make enough energy. So iron deficiency causes a very profound chronic type of fatigue. And a lot of patients with chronic iron deficiency will say after they receive an iron infusion, they feel better within several hours because the oxygen to their cells is boosted very quickly. Some people do need oxygen therapy as well. Hyperbaric oxygen can help people with chronic iron deficiency. And we can measure the iron in your blood very accurately. You can see with these blood tests. So if you're low in the top one, the iron, plus you're low in the bottom one, the ferritin, then you got a serious iron deficiency. Yeah, so there's many causes of fatigue, and that's why I said before, if somebody's tired, you've got to check all these things. Because if we're missing just 2 or 3, you'll not overcome this lack of energy in your body. So Igor, perhaps you'd like to show your presentation now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question. So you talked about how tyrosine can help produce dopamine. Can that help people with ADHD who don't produce enough dopamine, like taking a supplement?
Yes, definitely. People with ADHD, that they need more dopamine, so they can benefit greatly by taking a tyrosine supplement.
Hmm.
And also, as we mentioned, by growing their brain, by eating the right fats.
Mm-hmm.
But amino acids are great, and tyrosine's one of my favorite for dopamine. And, for anxiety, you can use another amino acid like GABA or L-theanine. And sometimes vegans do not get enough of these amino acids, or people who just don't eat enough protein. A lot of people do not eat enough protein and fat.
Or a lot of people just like eat protein, but it's in the form of processed food, so they don't necessarily derive the full amino acid profile from the food.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Thanks, Sandra. I can switch over to mine. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we've dived into the physiology. Now we're diving into the psychology of energy and fatigue.
Yes.
So yeah, not all fatigue is physical. Some people, they could have the perfect diet, everything's firing, everything's working well, but they're sleeping plenty and they're still feeling tired. So this is what I'm getting into. So the other side of fatigue can actually be caused by mental overload. So I actually did a talk at Tropical Innovations Festival last week about burnout. So if someone's overexerted themselves for a long enough period of time, they can. There's probably some physiological things going on there with adrenal fatigue potentially
Yes.
as well. Emotional suppression. So you're going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that, depression as an emotional illness is common, and it can first present as fatigue. And so it can be that psychological component, and it may not be recognized as a depressive illness because the patient is just presenting with fatigue. Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Another one is emotional suppression. I see this with some of my coaching clients. Is really just sweeping, is really not feeling whatever emotions we're feeling, and just sweeping it under the carpet. Like we're expected to go back to work after just a few days of losing a loved one, where there's a little bit of bereavement leave, and that's in my opinion, that's not enough. Like we need to actually feel the feelings and we need to process them properly. Otherwise, that can manifest in all sorts of ways, including fatigue,
Yes.
uh, unconscious identity conflicts. So we'll go into a bit more of that into subsequent slides.
Yes.
Lack of purpose or direction, that's a huge one. I remember when I was in my mid-20s, I just wasn't feeling good about where I was going. I was kind of just drifting through life and I didn't really have a purpose. I was just thinking, yeah, I'll just do this and this will make me money and happy days to live the Australian dream, buy a house, all that. But it just wasn't, it didn't align with what was, what I felt I should be doing. So I was feeling, I'd be drinking 3 coffees in the morning and I'd still be tired. And I think that lack of purpose or direction definitely played a part of it back then.
Yes. It does. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's fatigue is a huge energy leak, so psychologically. So like you explained, Sandra, about how it can be a lack of the right amount of energy through how we derive our ATP, produce our ATP and everything like that. But it can also be an energy leak when it comes to our psychology. So where does your energy go? We've got so inner conflict. So this is when I'll talk about this in the next slide. Where we think we should be doing something, but instead we're doing something else. So overthinking and looping thoughts. I sometimes have a habit of catastrophizing, thinking the worst thing's going to happen, and that can be draining. And then I
Yes.
always remind myself, does the worst thing ever happen? Very, very, very rarely. And then I kind of like let that thought go. I'm like, okay, that's not
Yeah.
serving me right now. That's just draining me, and
Well,
it's
what
not really.
happens? Yeah, what happens is, you have an anxious thought,
Mm,
and that causes your adrenaline to be released,
mm,
and it's not when you need your adrenaline. So the aftermath is that your adrenaline is depleted, and that will make you tired. And the other thing, it's impacting your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve becomes less dominant, and the sympathetic nervous system goes up, and that depletes your adrenaline.
mm.
So your thoughts can be a big cause of fatigue.
Huge,
Mm.
very interconnected. And that's essentially what chronic hypervigilance is thinking that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I think it's important to address that. And the way you can do that is actually just writing down your thoughts. Like once you start writing them down and looking at them later, and you realize, wow, none of these things actually happened. And the more you become aware of these patterns within yourself, because the first step of changing these patterns is actually being aware of them. Then you can once you become aware of them, then you can create new ones. You can counter them, and I'll sort of talk about the next slide. Past emotional baggage still running through, so that's obviously trauma, and we can talk about that as well. So from a neurolinguistic perspective, so I'm a certified NLP coach. So this is when we've got one part of us thinking that it wants to rest, another part of us thinking that actually I'm feeling lazy if I'm resting. So I used to think like that. I used to, beat myself up. I don't need to rest. There's lots to do. I can't rest. And then I actually never gave myself the time to rest. And therefore that, eventually leads to burnout and chronic fatigue and all those things. So I think it's important to actually acknowledge what you need in the moment and don't judge yourself for it. It's like realizing this is what your body needs right now. And how do we love ourselves? We actually listen to ourselves and treat ourselves like our own best friend. And if your friend wants to rest, you're not going to tell them, "Nah, get back to work." So you treat yourself in the same way. Like if your body's saying, "I want to rest," and okay, let's rest. Let's enjoy the rest as well. Let's not feel guilty about it too.
True.
Fatigue, so internal conflict. So it's really important to address these internal conflicts. We've got in NLP, we've got some great processes for addressing this. One of the ones I use with all my clients is called parts integration. It's quite a beautiful process, actually. Maybe one of these days I can maybe I don't know how I'd do it live. You'd probably have to do it with someone if they jump on. But anyway, like you're kind of looking at different parts of you, one part that feels one way and part feels another way, and realizing that they have the same common goal, and that common goal is often, they want you to be happy, or they want you to be successful, or whatever it is. And so you kind of like realizing that these different parts of you have the same common goal, and then you're realizing that, hey, like these are parts of the same whole, so they're not separate, they're one and the same. And so it's just a process of integration. It's a beautiful process. I've had many clients sort of really come to tears when they realize it's quite a beautiful process. So nervous system loop. So that's, again, we're talking about fight, flight, or freeze. So that sort of chronic anxiety. When we stay in a survival mode for long. So like I said in the past, we're not built to be in fight, flight, or freeze mode all the time. And this is when we're not thinking straight. We're literally not being able to access our neurofrontal cortex to make actual logical decisions, because we're in that emotional state. And and that obviously creates a lot of cortisol in the body. And that if we're in that state of mind constantly, so if we're thinking, that person doesn't like me from work every day in, day out, thinking, I'm going to stuff up, I'm going to create these problems, that's an ongoing state that leads to mental burnout. So there's all sorts of methodologies to address that. NLP is just one of them. Breath work is another real powerful one. I'd highly recommend, if that sounds like you, try the 4-7-8 breathing exercise. It only takes a minute, and that can really help you bring yourself into your body and release your nervous system and relax your vagus nerve. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. The rest and digest nerve, it's very much influenced by breathing, meditation. So I highly recommend that.
Safety cues, realizing that there's no actual danger, that you're in a safe place, you're surrounded by people who love you and want to support you. So I think that's important. Doing all these things really calm the nervous system and restore your energy. It's like, think about it. If you're like, you know, if you're sitting next to a snake thinking it's going to bite you at any time of the day, you're going to get very tired very quickly. That's essentially what we're putting ourselves through,
Yes.
just
Yes.
without the snake, or the snake's in our
Exactly.
mind.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, emotional suppression equals fatigue. So what we don't feel, we carry. So that's why I said it's important to really feel your emotions, really find a way to release them. You know, I had a client last week have a really strong emotion of anger, and I was telling him that actually, unless you find a way to release that emotion of anger, this is going to be something that's literally going to drain you. And it's going to come out in all sorts of ways that are not going to
Yeah,
be productive for your long-term happiness.
that's
So
right.
one way to release it is journaling. So that's, you know, it's a way to actually process your thoughts and process your emotions. And often when we journal, we find ways to reframe them. We're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way when we go back to our journal entries.
Yes.
Another one is actually to, like, if the emotion is anger, is get in the gym, you know, like, especially if you're a guy, we've got testosterone, we produce testosterone. We need a
Yeah.
release.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
this is why, like, you go into a, you know, I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 6 months, on and off. It was great. But all
Yeah.
the people I meet there, they're the calmest people. Like, I do CrossFit now. I've never seen an angry CrossFitter, because we've got an outlet. We go in there, we go hard, and then we go off with our day, and we're calm as a cucumber the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
Endorphins, you
good.
see, you're spiking
Mm,
your endorphins and you're increasing your mitochondria, and your cells start making more neurotransmitters and they get into balance, the neurotransmitters. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, so yeah, just like I said, avoiding these emotions takes energy. So you got to feel the emotion, process, give you time and space to process the emotions, and then when you're clear of the emotion, then you'll feel so much calmer and so much more energetic, and you'll be so much more centered within yourself. It makes a
Yeah.
huge difference. You know, from personal example, I used to hold on to that emotion of anger and sadness towards my dad because I expect him to be a certain way. But when
Yeah.
I went through a process of acceptance, I no longer carried that. I very, like, over time, my energy grew, and I no longer felt that drain, just feeling drained all the time, and just feeling
Yes.
um, tired. It made a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
NLP techniques, yeah. So timeline therapy, that's a pretty involved process that I take my clients through, and that's actually when you've got like an emotional burden. Often these are from our childhood. Um, it's something that you do actually need to work with someone to release, and that can be
Yes.
someone like myself, an NLP coach. It could be a somatic healer through body work. That can be another powerful process of releasing these emotions. There's all sorts of modalities, but I think it's important to
Yeah.
release these traumas from our childhood, because that's one way that we can sap our energies, by holding on to them. And this is at the subconscious level. You might not even know you're doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So fatigue is a message. So sometimes fatigue isn't a problem; it's a message. So you ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What am I? Where am I misaligned? And what do I really need right now? So really listening to yourself and listening to your unconscious mind is the key here.
Yes.
So here's some
Yeah.
reframes. This is great. These are great ones. So yeah, like the one I talked about before. I'm lazy. My body's asking for a pause. So you reframe within yourself and listening to yourself. So I have to keep pushing. So that classic Protestant work ethic that doesn't let us rest is resting now helps me go further later. So it's important to reframe, because once we reframe, we see it in a different way, and then we think about it in a different way. These are just some
Mm.
examples. I'm sure you'll come up with your own.
Yes.
Something's wrong with me versus maybe I've been living out of alignment.
Yes.
So yeah, that can
It's
really
good.
help forgive, help release, and help you get back to a place of balance, where and therefore more energy and less fatigue.
Mm.
So yeah, that's it for my part one, because I know you've got a part two, so I've divided mine into two as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, next week I'll be focusing on releasing stored emotional weight, so rebuilding your internal dialogue, NLP tools to shift identity and boost vitality, and aligning with values and purpose for the long-term energy. So we,
Yeah.
we could even do like a little values alignment exercise that I do with my clients. That could be cool.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks, Igor. That was very enlightening. And we have a question from Elizabeth Rizzo. She says, should you get a test before start taking supplements? Well, anybody with fatigue should be investigated. There's a lot of different tests that you can have if you're not getting better. But as far as just trying different supplements after you have been investigated and, the treating doctor cannot find any specific cause for your fatigue, well, what should you test? Well, before taking magnesium, you don't really need a test because most of the magnesium is found in your bones. So what shows up in your serum in a blood test is not reflective of whether you need magnesium or not. Now, NMN, that's the mitochondrial supplement, you can't really test for ATP. As I said, our mitochondria make energy in the form of ATP, and your body or your mitochondria will make your body weight of ATP every day. So if you weigh 100 kilograms, your mitochondria will make 100 kilograms of ATP. And it doesn't last long. That's why your body has to keep making it all the time. Otherwise, well, basically, you'd drop dead because your cells wouldn't have the energy to do anything. Your heart would stop, for example. So you cannot measure ATP. It's a very labile. It's very unstable. So, if you had chronic fatigue and it hadn't responded to treatment from your doctor, it's worthwhile taking NMN, I think, because it does have quite a lot of research and it's very safe. And, see if it helps you. It really is the same with inflammation. If you have too much inflammation in your body, well, you can test that you've got too much inflammation. But if you're going to take some supplements to reduce inflammation, particularly NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine, or selenium, having a blood test is really not going to tell you whether you need to take that, because most of selenium is found inside the nucleus of your cell. So a lot of supplements are trial and error, and well, a lot of drugs are too. You take something and your own body will tell you if it's helping you. And with energy, well, it may take 2 weeks, it may take 6 months, depending what the underlying cause of the problem is.
So my trial period of 1 month for any supplements probably not enough. Maybe I should give it more time.
Well, you're young, but if you have somebody older who's got a chronic disease, I'll say to them, well, look, you really need to give this 4 months. Because think about it, our red blood cells only live for 3 or 4 months. So the renewal process, it takes 3 to 4 months. And to repair damaged cells, it's going to take that long. So you've got to be persistent. You've got to be regular with the supplements and patient. And I say to people, well, if you try it for a week and it hasn't done anything, it's not significant. You really need to take it for several months. Yeah.
I just want to, I saw a talk ages ago by Dr. Zach Bush, and he was talking about the amount of energy that our mitochondria create. So, like, sure, it's 100, whatever your kilo of weight is, that kilo of an ATP that creates, but it's converting it to sunlight. So it's kind of like we're transforming what is essentially stored sunlight falling down on the plants, you know, whether we eat the vegetables or whether we eat the animals that eat the plants. And then we're reconstituting it into sunlight, essentially, into energy within our bodies, which is
Yes.
pretty phenomenal. We're kind of like all little walking power plants.
Yeah, we are. Well, the basic process of creating ATP generates a lot of electrons and hydrogen and protons, all sorts of things. So the whole thing is an electrical process. So our whole body is governed by electricity, which is generated in the mitochondria. So the process of making ATP is electrical. So the mitochondria are like little electrical generators. And so you can imagine what the effect of, you know, all the Wi-Fi, the EMF is having on our bodies. So, you know, some people just have so much exposure to EMF that in itself will cause fatigue. So they need to look at ways to minimize that exposure. So, you know, we could have an expert on our stream one day who's can talk with us about reducing EMF.
There's a type of rock. I'm just trying to remember. Oh yeah, here it is. Shungite. That can actually help shield against EMF. It doesn't look like much. It's like a black stone, and you can get it shaped in different shapes and sizes. And they have actually measured that it does reduce your exposure to EMF. So that might be worth looking into if people are sensitive to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all those different wavelengths. Well, someone's got a question.
Oh, somebody wants a replay. Well, you can explain that.
Yes. There will be a replay automatically posted to YouTube and Facebook. And I will go back and edit and make sure it looks pretty. So the initial automatic post might not look that great, but it's there. And we've got someone with another question. I'm having ginger, feeling better and worse. Oh, okay. Ginger and garlic.
Well,
they're having garlic too.
You can boost your energy by doing some raw juicing. You know, I have a book called Raw Juices Can Save Your Life. And actually, raw juicing saved my grandmother's life back in the 1920s when she had kidney failure. And there was no dialysis and, you know, she was given a death sentence. But through raw juicing, every hour, just small amount, she restored her kidneys back to normal. So for people with gut problems who are not breaking down plant food, they can get a juicer and juice some simple things like beetroot, carrot, cucumber, spinach, apple, orange, lime, and that can, you know, really help to repair their gut. After you talk for now, you get a bit hoarse.
You've been doing most of the talking, so I don't blame you.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a tickly throat.
All right, well, maybe we'll wrap it up so you can have a drink. Maybe have some ginger.
I think I need a drink, yeah. But it's a fascinating subject, energy, and I know for myself, you know, I'm in my mid-70s, and I have more energy now than I had in my 40s because, you know, I take magnesium, I take NMN, I eat well, take vitamin D, potassium. I take a lot of supplements that will help my mitochondria. And, of course, we haven't touched on sleep, but that's critical. You know, you've got to get that 7 to 8 hours of deep sleep for your body to reboot itself, your endocrine system and your immune system. So sleep is a critical factor for energy. Yeah,
I think it'd be good to maybe do an episode on sleep in the future as well. I was just wanted to add something else I do that really boosts my energy is time in nature. Like this morning, I went for a walk along the beach, and you know, I took my shoes off and I grounded myself and just took it all in. And I always feel more energized and more restored after time in nature, in the rainforest, on the beach, wherever.
Yes, well, interesting. The salt air is so therapeutic, and I have a patient at the moment with long COVID, and they had mucus on their chest, and they were a bit wheezy, just stuck mucus, and I put some sea salt in sterile water in the nebulizer and put a mask on his face, and he just breathed in that salty, humidified air from the nebulizer for half an hour, and he felt completely different. So,
Wow.
Being near the ocean, it gives you that salt and the iodine, which is so important for our thyroid gland and for our immune system. So, nature has its own therapeutic tools, and, just being part of nature in itself is so healing and so inspiring.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, as like Bush says, like we are nature. We've just defined ourselves out of it. So we just got to
Yeah.
get back to our definition of being part of the whole, which we are.
Yeah. And I'm a pilot, so I like being in nature on the ground, but when I'm in the air and I'm flying through clouds or on top of clouds, I feel energized just from being part of that incredible creation. Being in part of the sky. So that appreciation of nature can really boost our energy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing. It blows my mind. I keep forgetting you're a pilot. That blows my mind. That's really cool.
Yeah. Fun. Yeah. All
Mm.
right.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. I think we're pretty much it. We just got a few people saying they really enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Really
Yeah.
appreciate everyone's input as well. We've got a beautiful message from, I just want to put it up there, from Erica. Thanks so much for doing this live, Dr. Sandra Cabot Igor. So interesting and resonates. Looking forward to part 2. Have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you,
Yeah.
Erica. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to part 2 as well. We'll see everyone same time, same place next week.
Yeah. Well, get energized, everyone. Energy.
Yes. Come back buzzing of energy next week. Definitely. Thanks. All right. See you,
Bye.
Sandra. See you, everyone.
Well, thanks for being part of our webinar. If you have any questions or new topic suggestions, email us at support@liverdoctor.com. And don't miss our next webinar. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter at liverdoctor.com. Bye for now.